In last week's episode, we spoke about different opportunities in space and what you can do to be a part of Australia's space industry. This week, you'll hear about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and businesses who are involved in space and hear about their stories. You'll also hear directly from our mob and hear about their involvement in space and about their journeys to becoming involved in the space sector. Whether you want to work as a tradesperson, in business, or want to become Australia's first Indigenous astronaut, there is a place for First Nations people and businesses in space. Welcome to Episode 7, First Nations in Space.
Welcome back to our series with the Australian Space Agency. This week, we bring you a very special episode where we'll hear about First Nations people and businesses who are currently involved in the space sector. As you know, our mob are considered the world's first astronomers, and our connection to the sky country goes back over 60,000 years. Although the human relationship with space has changed, First Nations people are still important to our present and future in space. First Nations people have thousands of years of cultural and scientific knowledge, which provides us mob with an opportunity to contribute to the space sector and develop a uniquely Australian approach to space. Monash University from Victoria has developed a program to assist First Nations people on their journey into space. The National Indigenous Space Academy is an initiative run by Monash University and supported by the Australian Space Agency. The National Indigenous Space Academy provides First Nations university students with an opportunity to travel all the way to the United States and work with NASA. Justice Manton is a proud Eora Wiradjuri woman who took part in this initiative. Justice was inspired by her cultural heritage and family history, particularly a powerful connection to the Seven Sisters dreaming, and chose to pursue a career in space, where she has now worked in different Australian space organisations. Although not a part of the National Indigenous Space Academy, Peter Swanton is a Gamilarey Yuwalye man who works as an Indigenous Research Associate and lecturer at the Australian National University. Peter has a background in astronomy and astrophysics and wanted to combine this background with his cultural heritage. This inspired Peter to move into Indigenous astronomy and sky knowledges, where he works to highlight the scientific importance of Indigenous sky knowledge and what needs to be done to preserve these knowledges on country as well as in the night sky. You can find out more information on Justice and Peter's stories on the Australian Space Agency's website, as well as other. There are also First Nations businesses that are working in the space sector. The Centre for Appropriate Technologies, or CAT for short, is a proudly Aboriginal-controlled business with a majority Aboriginal membership, board and chairperson. CAT was established in Alice Springs in 1980 to research, design, develop and teach appropriate technologies and deliver technical training to Indigenous people living in remote communities. In 2019, CAT created a Satellite Enterprises branch and became Australia's first and only Aboriginal-owned and operated ground segment service provider when it agreed to host satellite ground stations at their site in Alice Springs. But what's even more impressive is that due to COVID, technicians from the United States were unable to make the trip to Australia to install the ground stations. So CAT relied on local mob to install the equipment instead. CAT's mission is to make sure that Indigenous Australians are active participants in the space economy and realise the benefits of services provided by space. CAT hope that by hosting ground stations at their site in Alice Springs, they are able to employ, train, and build the capacity of our Aboriginal workforce, who can then take their skills back to their own remote communities. Gungungji Aerospace is another First Nations-owned business working in the space sector. Gungandji Aerospace is headquartered in Queensland and was founded by Daniel Joinby, a proud Gungandji man who identified an opportunity for an Indigenous-owned company to revolutionise Australian industry by creating new pathways into aviation, space, and emerging technology. The business provides a high-quality consulting services to the defence, aviation, and space industries. They also want to inspire First Nations people to pursue careers in emerging industries. Gungandji Aerospace recognises that our mob come from different backgrounds and supports non-traditional pathways into the space industry, providing First Nations involved in space. The Australian Space Agency also has a number of First Nations staff contributing to the space sector. Dean Allen is a senior officer in the agency's international partnerships team, and we spoke to Dean about his journey to working in space. You're tuned into Tiba Radio, your voice in the bush, and today on the line, we're here with Dean Allen, who works as the Senior International Partnerships Officer in the Australian Space Agency. Thanks for joining us today, Dean. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and your journey?
Thanks, JR. I'm Dean Allen. I'm a proud First Nations Australian from the Yagara people of southeast Queensland. I work at the Australian Space Agency in the International Partnerships team. My role focuses on building and strengthening relationships with Australia's international partners to advance Australia's foreign policy objectives and support the growth and development of Australia's space sector. I currently lead on our space relationships with South Korea and New Zealand and contribute to our partnerships with the United Kingdom, Europe and Pacific Island countries. I'm also chair of the agency's Indigenous network, where I lead a team that works to create an inclusive and safe environment. We aim to encourage learning and showcase First Nations culture, science and history while contributing to the agency's priorities. I'm a lawyer by profession. I started my career in law, working primarily in the public sector. Nearly 4 years ago, I moved to the Australian Space Agency. Growing up, I've always felt a deep connection to the land and sky, a connection that shapes my understanding that space isn't just about technology and exploration, but also about stories, knowledge and perspectives that have existed for thousands of years. It's about bringing together traditional knowledge and modern innovation to create something truly unique and meaningful.
Have you always had an interest in space, and what inspires you about space?
Yes, I've always had a fascination with space. It's the final frontier, a place of endless possibility and discovery. Growing up, I was captivated by the large vastness of the universe and how much there is still to learn and explore. Space inspires me because it challenges us to think beyond our world and pushes the boundaries of human knowledge and capability. I'm drawn to the idea of bringing together diverse cultures and perspectives to solve complex problems and build a better future, exploring the unknown with curiosity and respect. As a First Nations person, space also has a deeper significance. Our cultures have been looking at the skies for tens of thousands of years, interpreting the stars and using them to guide our lives. I think there's a real strength in combining different perspectives, bringing together ancient knowledge and modern technology to build a space sector that's innovative and inclusive. I'm motivated by how space can empower communities, create opportunities, and inspire the next generation of First Nations leaders to boldly explore new possibilities.
Are there opportunities for First Nations people to be involved in space?
Most definitely, yes. There are many opportunities for First Nations people to be involved in space. These opportunities range from traditional STEM careers like engineering, satellite technology and data analysis to more non-traditional pathways such as law, policy, community engagement and even environmental management. Environmental management is a particularly important area as space projects often intersect with land use and environmental impacts. First Nations people have a deep connection to country and a wealth of traditional knowledge that can inform sustainable practices. Programs and initiatives are emerging to support Indigenous involvement, including STEM education pathways targeting young Indigenous students, industry partnerships aimed at increasing First Nations representation in space projects, support for Indigenous businesses looking to work in the space sector. It's all about Indigenous knowledge. Indigenous knowledge is invaluable. Working with First Nations communities is essential to incorporating their aspirations into a sustainable space sector, ensuring projects are grounded in respect and collaboration. I'm all for encouraging more Indigenous voices in space policy and decision-making. It is crucial in making the space sector more inclusive and reflective of Australia's unique identity.
So we've heard a little bit throughout the series about a uniquely Australian approach to space, but what does that mean?
A uniquely Australian approach to space is very important. What does it mean? A uniquely Australian approach to space means blending cutting-edge technology with deep cultural heritage. It's about acknowledging and valuing thousands of years of Indigenous knowledge of astronomy and sky stories, respecting and incorporating First Nations perspectives on how we observe, interpret and understand the skies. Central to this is moving at the speed of trust, building genuine and meaningful relationships with First Nations communities. It's about working collaboratively with communities to incorporate their aspirations into the space sector, making sure projects are not just innovative, but also culturally grounded and sustainable. By placing relationships and trust at the core, we build a space sector that is uniquely Australian, one that balances innovation with the wisdom and knowledge of our First Nations people.
Oh, that was excellent. Thank you very much, Dean. Of course, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to talk with myself and as well as the listeners out there on the TBAN network. We cover 29 plus Aboriginal communities here in the Northern Territory, and everybody will be listening in. And of course, a big shout out to you. You're a very accomplished man. You should be very proud of yourself. And we love hearing about, some of the opportunities in space for First Nations people. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, JL.
As you've heard today, there are already many First Nations people and businesses involved in space. And as we spoke about last week, there are plenty of opportunities for people to work in the space sector. Our mob's ongoing connection to Sky Country also provides us with opportunities to incorporate our cultural and scientific knowledge into a uniquely Australian way of doing space. In next week's episode, we'll take a look at some of the ways that First Nations knowledge can benefit space, as we explore First Nations perspectives in space. As always, if you'd like to learn more, visit the Australian Space Agency's website at space.gov.au. Until next time.